I think it's an article of faith with comics, really, that you can make a joke about anything, but it has to be the right joke. And I don't personally agree with the right to offend. I don't set out to offend people. I set out to make them laugh, entertain them, and inform them to some extent.
But now, the Emmy, Grammy, and BAFTA-winning TV producer, radio presenter, ad director, writer, and professor of general ignorance, John Lloyd, is here in the studio to tell me about performing at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe for the first time since 2015. John is known for being behind QI, Blackadder, Spitting Image, The News Quiz, Not the 9 O'Clock News, and he was also there at the start of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Johnny English, To the Manor Born, Have I Got News for You, and Mr. Bean. As I said to him as he came into the studio, I may not be a fan of everything he's ever done, but that will only be because I'm forgetting something he's done. John Lloyd, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Hugo. Good to be here.
Very, very nice to have you here. Let's start at the start. Tell me about your Edinburgh show. Do you know who I am? And tell me why it's guaranteed to be different every day.
Well, it wasn't my idea, but it's a great friend of mine who's a Scottish radio producer called Richard Melvin said, we've taken this Newtown Theatre, but we're part of the Stand, you know, the Edinburgh
of course.
comedy group. And he said, why don't you just do a Q&A? And we'll put it on the website, and people can ask you whatever they like about anything. And I thought, well, you know, I come from a time when people used to take risks a bit more, you know, and I thought, why not? I'll have a go. Because I like talking to people, and I've thought a lot about stuff. I'm 20 years of QI, and I know a lot of things about ostriches and frogs. And we'll see how it goes, because it's kind of the way we all at QI live our lives is like if a frog or a centipede is that interesting, people are many orders of magnitude more so. So, and it's sort of slightly based on the idea, I happen to be, one of my strange positions is I'm patron of the Jersey Arts Centre, because I gave a talk there and it went down quite well. So the guy who runs it says, why don't you be patron of the Jersey Arts Centre? Because our previous guy's just retired. It's 5 years, go once a year, get put up in a nice hotel. And I said, great. So, and the second year, he said, what should we do for your event? And I said, well, I've run out of my show. Did that last year. So why don't we do a Q&A? And you put all your questions on the website. You ask all the public to put their questions on the website, and I'll go through them just beforehand, and then we'll take it from there. So I turned up and I said, okay, great, have you got the questions? And he goes, bit of a problem, John, we only had one question. So I was booked for 90 minutes and I had to go out with this one question, which happened to be, do you prefer working with writers or actors?
And you got the whole show. I've just got a break for a moment. We've just had some breaking news. Ben Wallace has just tweeted, after careful consideration and discussing with colleagues and family, I've taken the decision not to enter the contest for leadership of the Conservative Party. I'm very grateful to all my parliamentary colleagues and wider members who have pledged support. It has not been an easy choice to make, but my focus is on my current job and keeping this great country safe. I wish the very best of luck to all candidates and hope we swiftly return to focusing on the issues that we were all elected to address. He is, of course, the Defence Secretary, and I suppose will remain as such. And that's 2 tweets rather than one, I'd imagine. There you go, some breaking news here on Times Radio. I'm currently speaking to John Lloyd about his Edinburgh show. Do you know who I am? John, what question do you expect to be asked most by audiences, or do you think it's going to be an absolute free-for-all?
Well, I won't. Usually it's what Stephen Fry really like.
What's Stephen Fry really like?
He's very nice. But the great thing is if you get the questions in advance, you can weed out, you know, so what tends to happen if you do a Q&A, you throw it open to the floor, and the first guy gets up and he goes, I'm wondering, do you really feel that what my point is that I'm very intelligent and I want to make a point about something which is very long-winded and boring, and what do you feel about that? And my other point is... And you waste half the time.
Less of a question, more of an observation.
Exactly.
Oh, yes. The bane of any host's life. Yes. Well, look, I mean, if people wanted to spend the entire time asking you questions about the various things you'd made, they would. I was going to say they would not be sport for choice. They would be sport for choice. They'd have a huge amount they could ask you about. What single scene or sketch or TV moment from your career would you insist goes into your 10 o'clock news obituary, perhaps 100 years from now?
Well, I mean, I've had a few kind of epiphany moments in my life, maybe 5. And one of them was the last scene in Blackadder 4, which regularly makes lists of, the 50 most interesting moments of television and all that kind of thing, which was really a complete accident. It started out as a complete disaster and ended up as this extraordinary, poignant moment as we sat in the video edit watching it develop almost as if it was magic, and it's obviously very moving, but you have this strange sense that we had sort of nothing to do with it. It was just a very, very good team who just faced a very difficult problem of a disastrous final scene and made it work. It was,
but what is the epiphany? I mean, that's the scene where they go over the top and there's the poppies and it all.
Yes.
Yeah, but what is the epiphany there for you? Is it to do with the relationship between comedy and tragedy, the poignancy of comedy?
It's sort of like when you touch the numinous, if you know what I mean. You're suddenly in a thing where you're touching a sort of underlying reality that's bigger than all the people in the room. It's the most peculiar. Maybe epiphany is not the right word, but it was a kind of mystical experience. It's something which is very banal, making a television sitcom, and suddenly it turns into something really
transcendental.
Yes, transcendental. That's very good.
Yeah. Stephen Fry, to come back to him, once said about you, the great thing about you, Lloyd, is as a producer, at least you don't make things worse. That sounds like faint praise, but I suppose the TV industry is full of TV producers who do indeed make things worse. What's the skill there?
Well, I think, again, I would say it's getting out of the way. Do you know what I mean? I don't think of myself as the boss. I think of myself as somebody who is the guardian of what's good and to try and persuade people that they can be better than that. And I think that's actually a high compliment, not to make things worse. It's like, but getting out of the way, it's something that I feel about, for example, I was so wrong when we had children to start with. You think it's all about boundaries and, telling them what to do and what they should eat. But actually, being a good parent is getting out of the way and being nice, Be kind and be there. That's it.
On QI, Fry to Toksvig was a fairly seamless transition. As an expert in seamless transitions, the country right now perhaps... needs somebody who could advise them what to do in a similar manner. How do we fry to Toksvig the situation of Prime Minister?
That is a very difficult question. I think Ben Wallace has got the right idea. Would you want that job at this point?
No.
It's a bag of frogs, isn't it? It's really.
Well, don't you find that him deciding he doesn't want it makes you sort of wish all the more that he was going for it?
Yeah, I think he seems a pretty sensible guy, I think. But it's just the range of problems that have been set up now that you've got to solve. I don't know how you would begin, really. It's, as I say, the main thing is, why would anybody want that job, even in the best of times? But now, it's a poison chalice, I think, and any other kind of cliche.
You'd think, the job of producing comedy is surely getting harder as well. It's not quite like being Prime Minister, but the way in which the world works, the things that people notice, the things that people object to, the sort of shifting lines on issues of taste and decency and balance and offence and all that kind of stuff. Have you been aware of them getting narrower and narrower?
Well, QI is a bit of, as Stephen always called it, a safe haven from, contemporary culture. We don't really deal with that very much. We're doing a lot of history and science and all that kind of thing. But, I used to produce Spitting Image back in the day. So your dad was a character in it.
We were very proud.
Yeah.
I remember the first time he was on.
Yeah.
He owned his own puppet for a while,
Oh, did he?
Yes.
Did he? Voiced by Stephen Allen, who also did Mrs. Thatcher.
Terrified my daughter. But yes.
Yeah. But I wouldn't want that job now. It was tough enough when I was, 30-something. I don't want to get involved in the political landscape, really. I'm happy just, having friends and family and, hoping that a lot of it will go away. But, your dad, that's an interesting thing. Why doesn't he stand?
Well, he's not an MP.
Is he not?
No, he's not been an MP for some years.
Okay.
I should not forget live on radio how many years my father's not been an MP for, but a while. 2015, I think it was.
But when you think back to those times... There were some big beasts in those cabinets, weren't there? Is it true that here's a QI fact. I think your father was the longest-serving British minister since Palmerston. Is that right?
He was equal at the time with Linda Chalker and I think Ken Clarke.
Wow.
But then Ken Clark, of course, served again afterwards. So,
he's not the record holder.
it wasn't continuous. For continuous service, I believe it was. But I'm the one asking the questions. Look, you mentioned. I mean, similar to what I was just asking. You worked with Rowan Atkinson a lot, not least in Blackadder that we were just talking about. He was in the news recently when he was defending free speech in comedy, saying the job of comedy is to offend or have the potential to offend, and in a proper free society, you should be allowed to make jokes about absolutely anything. Would you agree with that completely?
I think it's an article of faith with comics, really, that you can make a joke about anything, but it has to be the right joke. And I don't personally agree with the right to offend. I don't set out to offend people. I set out to make them laugh, entertain them, and inform them to some extent. And I think you can. I wouldn't call QI offensive, would you? It's very hard to think of.
Sure.
It's possible, actually,
And
I don't. Again, I don't.
To Alan Davies sometimes. I would say.
I don't think there's the universe is a very big place. There's plenty of stuff to make jokes about without having to be nasty about it. And I don't believe, for example, that all humour is cruel. I think if you think of what things that make children laugh, and so a lot of humour, good humour is silly, is warm, is surprising. Doesn't necessarily have to take sides, and that's why I wouldn't want to be in satire anymore, because you've got to basically come down sort of one side or the other. And sometimes, you get older, you think it's a bit more nuanced than that. I can think of people in politics whose views I don't like, and then you suddenly think, but they also do this. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, people are large; they contain multitudes.
Speaking of the universe, you produced the radio shows with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy way back then, working with Douglas Adams. Without him, I think I would be a different writer, or no writer at all, had I not read him.
Well, I didn't produce. I actually co-wrote it. He got stuck because he was my best mate,
sure.
and then I took it to television. They wouldn't let me produce it, so I'm a co-writer really. But
did it feel? I mean, I'm always blown away by its timelessness.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Did it feel like that was what you were doing at the time?
Well, we talk about transcendental moments. It's that sort of thing. Just right from the title, you think something's just happened here.
Right.
A bridge has been crossed in some other landscape. And I remember, because Douglas was a tremendously unself-aware person. He came in after the first one went out, came into the office in BBC Radio where we all worked, and said, any reviews in the papers? And we said, Douglas, Gillian Reynolds does a radio review once a month of the entirety of the BBC's output. There aren't any reviews. We opened the papers, and there they all were. The Times, the Telegraph, this obscure, completely unknown writer with this new series, and it was everywhere. And it was like that, there was an incredibly steep ascent, and they were within 3 or 4 weeks, there were 6 publishers asking for the rights. And again, I think that Douglas did... He found work terribly, terribly difficult, but that was his kind of truth, if you know what I mean. That was it's a kind of perfect form of self-expression, and it is extraordinary how 17-year-olds now pick up those books and go, "Wow, this is amazing."
Yeah,
and he was, of course, predicted. Basically, The Hitchhiker's Guide is an electronic book. It's a combination of an iPad and Wikipedia, I suppose.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, no, I've never stopped reading them. So conversely, can you tell me someone who you've worked with who you still can't work out why they didn't become a megastar, that you always thought would explode and didn't?
Oh gosh, there was the day I first saw Rowan Atkinson. The previous night, I'd seen a 16-year-old black girl singer at the Edinburgh Fringe Club who sang like Ella Fitzgerald, and I was completely blown away by her. And the next night I saw Rowan Atkinson for the first time, and same thing. And I thought, my boss, a guy called David Hatch, came up and said, I haven't got much time. I've only got time to see 2 things. And I said, these are the 2 things you must see. And Rowan, of course, is probably the most famous comedian the world's ever seen, and this girl never heard of again.
Yeah, wow, yeah, it's the lottery. Look, I guess my final question, because alas, we're running low on time, but you've had such a sort of multifaceted career in so many directions. You've done so many different things. For someone who wants to have you're still having, for someone who wants to have a career that's that sort of diffuse and that's spread out and has that much freedom in it, what advice would you give them?
Well, it's Winston Churchill's great quote: "Never, never, never, never give up." That's all it is. Because if you think I've got some successes, you should see the failures. You should see the things that never got commissioned, that never, were never financed, or so years and years of work to no avail at all. So it's just getting back on the horse when things go wrong, really.
Is it and being prolific as well, presumably?
It's perseverance is much more important than talent. I don't think I'm particularly talented, but I am very, very determined.
Well, I think that, as a last answer, I think that's absolutely preposterous. But thank you very much indeed for sharing it and everything else. Thank you very much indeed, John Lloyd.
Thanks, you guys.
And you can